40s, the theater of the Second Global Conflict. The army of the Third Reich parades on the Champs-Élysées. The Japanese attack Pearl Harbor. The Warsaw Ghetto falls into the hands of the Germans. On February 4th, 1945, in Yalta, Roosevelt, Churchill, and Stalin prepared the New World Order. On August 6th of the same year, Nagasaki and Hiroshima discovered the horror of the atom bomb. The 40s are the political years which prepared the world to face the 20th century, a strange time. Art and culture became more politically concerned and more militant. Romanticism had been left far behind, and neo-realism hadn't yet emerged. Marcel Carné finished shooting Les Enfants du Paradis. Saint-Exupéry published The Little Prince, Jean Cocteau, Les Enfants Terribles. But poets alone could not heal the world, and on the 31st of December 1941, Greta Garbo decided to leave cinema for good. They made 9 films together and were never married. However, their love story continued in discretion, without interruption or failing, and without media attention, from 1941 to 1967.
Spencer Tracy through his films, and I idealized him.
I tell you I can't go now. The paper's in a jam. We're facing a libel suit.
Well, you're facing a breach of promise suit. If you don't want to marry me, just say so.
I'm glad you're getting yourself all upset, darling, over here. A little drinky, maybe.
No, not today I don't. Today I get married.
I appreciated his virile side.
I wouldn't quite
He was the type of man I was attracted to. Men like my father, silent, proud, and solid, who, in spite of an apparent severity, had a great sensitivity and a warm personality.
Right now, with interest.
In fact, I discovered her in George Cukor's Indiscretions in 1940. I'd even thought of her for the 2 main female roles in Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, directed by Victor Fleming.
Chained together in the soul. Man is not truly one.
But Louis B. Mayer refused.
Now, supposing we could break that chain, separate those 2 selves, free the good in man and let it go on to its higher destiny, and segregate the bad. Let it destroy itself in its own degradation.
Did you think that Dr. Jekyll was falling in love with you? You with your cheap little dreams?
For Mayer, Kate was an arrogant, authoritarian woman who was always right and who had the gumption to wear pants in public. It was the producer, Joseph L. Mankiewicz, who introduced us. The first words that came out of the bag of bones, one of the many affectionate terms I had for Kate, were, "I'm afraid I may be a little too big for you, Mr. Tracy." Joseph jokingly replied, "Don't worry, baby, he'll quickly bring you down to his level." It's true that she was tall for an actress. She measured 5'9". When she left the room, I told Joseph that it was out of the question for me to work with this woman. That's how everything started.
In fact, Spencer impressed me a lot, and my arrogance concealed a profound shyness. There were a lot of rumors going around about him. He had a reputation of being a big womanizer and drinker. That summer, in the year 1942, I proposed the idea to George Stevens of doing a cinema adaptation of a work whose rights I had just bought, Woman of the Year. I availed of the chance to request that Tracy be hired for this film. When I asked him what he thought of the script, he answered, "It's all right, it holds together. but watch out during the love scene, stupid. It was the beginning of a wonderful friendship.
From the beginning of the shoot, something exceptional happened between Katharine Hepburn and Spencer Tracy. Little by little, the actors and the technicians began to notice the changes. The stupid, or this woman, became Kate, or Kath. For her part, even if she continued to wear her wide pants or her jeans, Kate emphasized her femininity. On the very first day of shooting, their acting was transformed. They started imitating each other. Woman of the Year topped the box office of the season, and Katharine was nominated for an Oscar. The majority of the 9 films they made together were variations on the idea that in order to be a real woman, a wife has to put herself second to her husband.
Tracy had a more conventional point of view on male-female relationships, but I have to admit that the films were a reflection of our own relationship. Good-natured arguments, black humor, a mixture of joy and despair. However, I was raised by a mother who was a feminist right down to her toes. I was born Katharine Houghton Hepburn on May the 12th, 1907, in Hartford, Connecticut. My father was a doctor. My mother was a suffragette and often brought me along to feminist demonstrations. They were perfect parents. They raised us in a spirit of complete freedom. There were no rules, just the things we did and those things we didn't do to hurt others. From my earliest years, I was obsessed by theater. One day, when I was 13 years old, my brother's suicide changed the course of my life. I had just experienced a tragedy. I isolated myself from others, forcing myself to reflect on life. My childhood didn't last long. Having become unsocial, moody, and not inclined to study, my only hope was to become an actress, even if people thought I was too skinny and badly presented. My role as the Amazon Antiope in Julian Thompson's play The Warrior's Husband, performed at the Morosco Theatre in 1932 in New York, was to decide my fate. A Hollywood agent, Leyland Haywood, started to woo me, thinking that I could become a future star in Hollywood. He got a proposition from Paramount that I turned down. I was asking for a fee of $1,500 a week. It was RKO who accepted and gave me a screen test. As fate would have it, the director George Cukor saw the tests. As he didn't want the producer David O. Selznick's girlfriend in the film, A Bill of Divorcement, that he was going to be directing, he chose me. 2 years after my arrival in Hollywood, with Morning Glory in 1934, directed by Lowell Sherman, I got the first of my 4 Oscars. I made 8 feature films with George Cukor and 2 television films. Some of them, like Sylvia Scarlett, earned me the nickname Bottom of the Box Office. But many of the films I made have become classics today.
Gave someone that bag to hold and that... I hope you realize that you've made a perfect fool of yourself in front of everyone. Have you finished?
Yes, I have.
Thank you very much. Oh.
You lied to me.
Yes, but just a little bit.
I mean, no. Story about
but it
a
isn't
leopard.
a ridiculous story. I have
Where is the leopard?
In there.
I don't believe you.
But you must believe
I've been
me.
the victim once more of your unbridled imagination.
I I didn't accept the macho codes that ruled in Hollywood. I refused to put on makeup and to pose for the photographers. When cinema turned its back on me, I returned to the theater in indiscretions. I bought the movie rights to the play, and when I couldn't get Tracy and Gable, I managed to convince Cary Grant and James Stewart to act in the film. It was a resounding success.
Someday over the rainbow, way up high.
What is this, Connor?
Oh, easy, old man. She's not hurt?
No.
Not wounded, sir, but dead.
Seems the minute she hit the water, the wine hit her.
Now, look here, Connor.
A likely story, Connor.
Hello, Dexter. Hello, George. Hello, Mike.
What in the name of all that's holy am I to do?
Tracy.
Yes, Mike.
Old Parson Parsons. He's never seen Kidridge before, has he? Now, look. I got you into this thing, and I'll get you out of it. Will you marry me, Tracy?
When I met Kate, I already had a long and brilliant acting career behind me, which had started out in the theater. I was born on the 5th of April, 1900 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Spencer Bonaventure Tracy, son of a salesman for a truck company. I wanted to leave school early to start working. I was always independent until my path crossed that of Kate's. When I was 17, I tried to get enlisted in the Army so I could fight in the First World War. I was rejected for being too young until the Navy finally accepted, but demobilization arrived before the baptism of fire. So then they gave me an allowance so I could continue going to school. In 1921, in college, I discovered theater and the pleasure of acting. I made my choice, and I decided to pursue it professionally. In certain companies where I was hired, we were performing one play, learning another one, and rehearsing a third all at the same time. In September 1923, I married Louise Treadwell, who, like me, was acting in the Leonard Wood Stock Company. John Ford spotted me and had me hired by Fox for his film Up the River with the young Humphrey Bogart. Louise and my son John came to join me in Hollywood, and there I started doing film after film. In the first 3 years, I must have done 15. I had to wait for the release of Fury, directed by Fritz Lang, before becoming an A-list star. I got my first Oscar for the part of Manuel in Captain Courageous, directed by Victor Fleming in 1937. Kate always cried when she watched it. I got another one for the role of Father Flanagan in Norman Turog's Boys Town. Then came 1942, and Woman of the Year entered the cinema, and my life.
Shortly after our first meeting, I found myself confronted with a problem that I had already experienced with John Ford: alcoholism. All through my relationship with Tracy, I had to fight against this drug, which was to take him away from me. He was only 7 years older than me, but at the age of 41, his health was already seriously damaged because of alcohol abuse. His heart wasn't very solid at all. He often had melancholy phases because of his marriage and his son's deafness. As a Catholic, he didn't want to divorce his wife, Louise, and they worked together to open the John Tracy Institute for Deaf Children. Spencer couldn't resolve to abandon his wife and his 2 children. Between 1942 and 1949 was our period of greatest happiness. Spencer and I made 6 films together, but we continued to live separately. For Tracy, I was a friend, a secretary, a babysitter, a cook, and a driver all at once. I even succeeded in getting him to stop drinking. On weekends, when we weren't working, we went for walks, we went swimming, we talked, and we painted. If Tracy was filming without me, I accompanied him to the studio, kept him company on the set, and brought him back to the house, where I fixed him solid meals. As long as I was close to him, he didn't drink. But as soon as I left to do a play or when I couldn't follow him on a film, Tracy abandoned himself to his favorite sport, drinking.
I love you very much, Colonel.
You kind of took advantage of me. You know that, don't you, Mrs. Bruton?
That's what an advantage is for.
It better look like you or I'll drown it.
In 1955, I accepted a theatre tour in Australia. Spencer took this departure as a personal affront and started drinking again. He arrived 6 days late on the set of Tribute to a Bad Man without giving the slightest explanation to the director, Robert Wise. He was replaced by James Cagney, and his contract with MGM, which had been supposed to last 21 years, was cancelled. After that, I decided never to leave him again. His Oscar nomination for John Sturge's Bad Day at Black Rock did away with the rumors that gave him slim chances of working in Hollywood again in one fell swoop.
Devil at 4 o'clock.
What's it to you? You spit your teeth. Jersey, that would be. Jersey City, maybe, huh? I come from just across the river, Hell's Kitchen. We used to eat punks like you.
Tracy was a sick man from then on. His liver was ruined, his heart and his lungs were weak. I took attentive care of him, cheering him up and encouraging him to work again. For me, things were going quite well professionally. I was filming this crazy project for John Huston, who had offered me a role alongside Humphrey Bogart in African Queen, a shoot which remains one of the most stimulating of my career.
Put this supper, miss.
I'm the captain, that's who. And I ain't taking you along. You'd only be in my way.
I suppose I was in your way going down the rapids. Then what you said to me back there on the river was a lie about how you never could have done it alone and how you lost your heart and everything. You liar. I never dreamed that any experience could be so stimulating.
Then I played Sebastian's mother in Joseph Mankiewicz's Suddenly Last Summer, which required me to deeply call my personality into question. In spring 1958, Tracy and I went to Cuba for the shoot of The Old Man and the Sea, with Fred Zinnemann directing. Tracy wasn't satisfied with the film and started on a tour of Havana bars, which I had to drag him away from to get him home.
At the projection of The Rushes, with Kate's support, Hemingway decided to replace Zinnemann with John Sturges. It was at this time that the press started to talk about a possible love affair between us.
Spencer Tracy was getting sicker and sicker. No one wanted to work with him anymore. It was Stanley Kramer who took the financial risk of having us work together again.
The story of Guess Who's Coming to Dinner concerns a middle-class couple who are obliged to accept that their daughter is marrying a man of color. The theme suited Kate's liberal thinking perfectly. I accepted the part without even reading the story. Her enthusiasm was enough for me.
Academy Award winner Katharine
Stanley was taking a big risk in casting me. The insurance company refused to cover me.
When the film came out, it was one of the couple's greatest successes. It made millions for Columbia, which had been having serious financial problems.
I love your daughter. There is nothing I wouldn't do to try to keep her as happy as she was the day I met her. But it seems to me, without your approval, we will make no sense at all. That is why I'm asking for the clearest possible statement of what your attitude is going to be.
I appreciate that, Doctor. It's almost in the form of an ultimatum.
Not quite, Mr. Drayton. All you have to say is goodbye.
In the weeks following the end of the shoot, Katharine took the habit of sleeping in a small room at the end of the corridor that led to Spencer's bedroom. On Saturday, 10th of June 1967, Tracy had a heart attack and died in Hepburn's arms. She did not attend the Requiem Mass in homage to the man she had loved. She remained in her house to avoid giving the photographers anything to gossip about. 48 hours later, she presented her condolences to Louise. Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn were nominated for Oscars in April 1968.
I was in Nice on the set of The Mad Woman of Chaillot, directed by Brian L. Forbes, when I learned that I had won the Oscar for Best Actress for the second time. But I'm sure that this prize was for the two of us.
Katharine Hepburn holds the record for Oscar nominations, 12 to date. She has won 4 times. Sometimes you can be liked by both the public and the critics. It is rare for actors to be also liked by their peers. Spencer Tracy belongs to this very select club. The woman who asked if men and women could really live together experienced one of cinema's most beautiful love stories in hiding, being unable to give a child to the man who shared her life. It was through the dialogue of their films that Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn dared to declare their clandestine love to the world, making their story all the more moving.